Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Mathis. Welcome to another 7 Minutes to PMP Mastery. We are a premier ATP with the Project Management Institute. And so let's get into our video today. And the title of our video is What Do You Need to Know About Risk to Pass the PMP Test? So when you look at risk for the PMP, one of the things that might be a little different for you is that in PMI's world, they have both the threats and the opportunities. This was new when I got into this years ago, but they do both. They have both the threats and the opportunities. Threats are going to be the negative risk, opportunities are going to be those positive things that you want to have happen. So negative risk, which are threats, can hurt the project in some manner, such as increase the time, cost, or reduce the quality. Project managers and teams do not want threats to happen and do not want the full impact of threats. So since you know that that's a position of PMIs that they don't want the threats to happen and don't want the full impact of that threat to happen, that helps you be able to narrow down your answers on some of these risk type questions. On positive risk, which are opportunities, opportunities can help the project increase speed, cost less, create a better solution. Project managers and team want opportunities to happen. So when you see a test question for an opportunity, look for an answer to where it's going to support that opportunity, make that opportunity happen. So as you look at this slide is going to talk about the risk process for the exam. And notice it's giving you several steps here. Review the risk register, analyze the risk, consult the risk management plan, and then implement the planned response. This reeks of traditional project management. The Agile side, you're doing your projects per sprint or iteration. So your risk is going to be per sprint or iteration. So you don't have this stringent risk management plan over on the Agile side. And so when they talk about consulting a risk management plan, you don't have much of a risk management plan on the Agile side because you typically will have contingency on that Agile side, not mitigation. All right, so when we look on the test, that one of the confusing things that happens sometimes is people get confused over risk and issues. A risk is a potential future event. An issue is a current problem. And the reason why you need to look at it just like this, your industry or organization might look at it a little different, is we will weave those issues into risk or those risks into issues a lot of times. On the test, it's going to be pretty specific. If it's in the future, it's going to probably be a risk. If it's happening now, it is an issue in the PMI world. So when we talk about risk and issues, risk are always in the future and that can be both positive or negative. You do not have a positive issue in this test. And so issues are going to always be current, but it's always going to be just negative. So if they talk about opportunity, they're always going to be talking about risk. So there's different types of strategies for dealing with negative risk, and you want to make sure you know each of these. So the first one is called avoid or avoidance. And so this is where you remove some or all of the risk because you don't want the risk to happen, obviously. One of the most common things that they do on the test is they will tell you in the narrative that they have changed the project plan is what they will describe in that scenario. Now, what that means is that they're avoiding risk because the project plan is going to take the project in a different direction. The second is going to be mitigate. Mitigate and contingency are not synonymous. Mitigation is always going to be in the future before the risk happens. Contingency is always after the risk happens. So in mitigation, you put a plan in place before the risk begins to reduce some or all of the risk. The tools that they talk about typically for mitigation is early planning, early intervention, because it's happening before the risk happens. The third is going to be transfer. So we remove the risk from one person or company to another person or to another company. So transfer actually has two things that pop up on the test with frequency. You might see something where it talks about a fixed price contract. That is a transference tool. And so this risk is so high that we've hired your company to work with this because you have experience. So we do a fixed price contract, which means we know what we're paying, and then you're taking the risk for that particular activity. So the risk transference would be fixed price contract. The other would be insurance. We bought insurance on something. If you think about your house, you've bought insurance on your house to transfer the risk from paying for the house to the insurance company. So acceptance is another piece. You can have passive and active acceptance. And so active acceptance allows you to understand that you're going to do certain things, maybe create a plan, maybe create a checklist of certain things to watch watch for that risk. That's going to mean you've done something. Passive, you're kind of letting it just happen. And so acceptance can happen on both a threat or an opportunity, and it can be passive or active. Active focuses on creating at least some type of plan, and then planning to encounter that threat or support the opportunity, where passive is going to be when it happens, we will deal with it. So it will be very distinct in between those two. Types of positive risk strategies. This is what they would talk about for opportunity. Now, for opportunity, you're going to notice that exploit and enhance look very similar. So, exploit, you're assigning the best resources to work on an assignment to guarantee the opportunity happens. Remember, you want it to happen. So enhance, you're assigning more people, but not necessarily your best people. So, your A team is always going to go with exploit. These are my best people. I'm putting them on it to make sure it happens. Enhance, I've put more people on it. Share is another strategy, and share, you're typically going to read in that scenario that the organization has brought in another organization or another company for some reason, and so they're going to be getting part of the fees of that, and so there's some type of partnership they've put together, and then the purpose for that is to make sure that opportunity happens. Just because you partner with someone does not automatically mean that it's going to be a share type situation. I maybe have just hired you to help me with my project, but this situation is I've shared this with you because that opportunity is so big and so powerful for our organization and for our project, we want it to happen. And then the last would be acceptance, just like we talked about before. You can have passive or active acceptance here as well. Contingent response strategies are triggered by risk events. Many times people will misunderstand contingency and mitigation. Mitigation is always happening before the risk event happens. Contingent responses are always triggered by the risk event. It's what we're going to do for Plan B. So residual risk remain after the response and secondary risk created by response. So we put the response into place and we've still got other risks that are happening because of that response. That's going to be residual or secondary risk. So one of the things to also think about that has been a little bit of a trick too, you're not developing risk strategies for all of your risk. You're developing it typically for the top 5 to 10 top risk. You might have 35 risk on a project, but many of them are much smaller. So your top 5 or 10 is what you're really working on. And then risk monitoring and control. Monitoring risk involves tracking its performance, conducting audits and resolutions, audits and tracking if the risk responses are working correctly. Does the team follow the risk process? Everything about this slide reeks traditional because it's talking about following a process for risk, and it's talking about auditing and tracking and monitoring and controlling. And so one of the things you want to understand is on the traditional side, this is where this is going to happen more because you've got a risk management plan. Your team is monitoring every aspect of that risk. You're doing audits on that risk. On the agile side, you're only talking about risk if it happens from a contingency standpoint because you're running it in a 2-week sprint. And so you're talking about some of the risks, but you don't have this massive risk management plan on the agile side. Secondary risk are those which surface as a result of implementing a risk strategy. We put the risk strategy in place, and now these are the risks that have happened because of that strategy. So you might find yourself having to come up with some type of contingency for those particular risks as well. Now, a little acronym that might help you on some of this would be TRACK, T-R-A-C-K. Track existing risk, reassess the risk, audit the response, check the reserves, keep documentation updated. As I said before, all of these steps that we're looking at right here under track, that's going to fit in even more so on the traditional project, not on the agile side. Remember, agile, you want the changes to happen. It's a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom. Your customer and your stakeholders are embedded in the team. They have a seat at the table. So what happens is you're talking about a lot more of it rather than on the traditional side, you're planning a lot more of it. So something to keep in mind, okay? So let me close this by saying thank you so much for watching the video and I hope it helps you in the area of risk. We run virtual PMP exam prep boot camps every other month, and I'm the one who teaches it. I'd love to have you in a class. If you have other questions or you'd like to ask me something, send me an email or call the 800 number, and Wanda and Kim will be able to help take care of you with some of that as well. So thank you so much for watching the video today. Hope you have a great week. Bye now. See ya.